Pablo, it's so nice to see you again in Singapore. We met, I don't know, a couple of years ago, even before you came to Singapore. For me, you're like the guru of the smart cities and generally speaking, of the future of cities for energy, but not only for energy. Maybe you can tell me just in one sentence your background, because I remember I think you're an architect. But tell me in a few words your background, and then I will ask you about the future of the cities.
Okay, so thanks for inviting me to come. So actually, I'm an architect myself. From Spain. I was in Germany teaching at the university, and I began to work for the French utility EDF, and they sent me here to Singapore to work on the Smart Cities project, where I work with the government in order to help them and support them on making decisions on the smart cities and how they're going to create the Singapore of the future.
Wow. So maybe we'll come back later about Singapore, but generally speaking, for you, what is the future of cities in general?
This is an exciting time because it's actually cities are the decision-making points of the 21st century. So until now, it was the nation who made the most of decisions, but with the introduction of new technologies in energy, for example, and the different distributed energy systems, but not just new network and social media, the decisions are taken more and more at the lower scales, and the cities are taking more power in the decision of the shaping of the environment. That's why in the next 20 to 50 years, we are going to see how the cities are going to be the decision makers of the world, and maybe nations are going to reduce the kind of decisions or reduce the amount of decisions they take. So that's why right now cities, they are confronted to a new challenges that they were not prepared before. That's what we do, for example, for EDF. We help them to make decisions in questions where they didn't have the power before. So that's why it's very important that the cities are empowered with new tools and new knowledge to be able to cope with these challenges.
Very interesting. And today we know the cities how they are, with buildings of a certain size, going taller and taller every day, with roads, with cars, mostly in the road. How do you see the shape of the cities changing, of big cities changing in the next 5 or 10 years or more?
I think cities are not going to change enormously in the way they are constructed, because the construction is something that is not going to change so much, but in the way they function. So in the way the people interact. For example, you're going to have cars, but maybe you are going to have autonomous cars. You are going to have banks, but maybe you're going to have more online banking and less physical banking, as is happening. You're going to have a lot of changes that is more on the function and then the use of spaces. So I used to say that the necessity today is to create a space for creation and innovation. You can see all these new incubators, all these new co-working spaces in the world. What is there is just a space that the people use to do things. And in the cities, it's going to be probably something similar. We are not going to have one space specific maybe for a function, but a space where many things can happen depending how the people decide to use it. And then this is probably what is going to change. So we are going to see less specific buildings for specific purposes, and more buildings that are open to many different purposes depending on what the people want to do with them.
Multi-purpose buildings, different on the time, and
exactly.
Very interesting. And if you had to choose the three most disruptive technology that will change cities in the next 10 years?
Wow, this is a complicated question. I think what did change the city from the 19th century to the 20th century is the car. That's why probably the shape of the city is going to be changed through the transportation. So it could be autonomous vehicles, maybe not just individual autonomous vehicles, but more collective autonomous vehicles that allows us to put more people in the same space in order to reduce congestion. This could be one thing. Other thing are new technologies maybe developing on the mass transport systems. So this is connected to the other one, but not necessary. So there are some new developments on the aerial systems, maybe drones. So there is these kind of systems that can have a very big impact. And I think if I have to think a third one, probably would be more a social one, probably on the way we make decisions, maybe more public decisions, and then maybe we are going to lose administration in the way that we are going to have more people making decisions online, or maybe not online, but in a more flexible, dynamic way, so that the people are going to take more the lead on how the cities are shaped. And then we're going to have more communities, community gardens. We're going to have other kind of spaces where the people come together, and they are maybe structured in smaller units than before, but more autonomously and less hierarchically structured.
Very interesting. So let's talk a little bit about energy and the future of energy related to cities. Being here in Singapore, it's like the perfect case, perfect storm maybe, or perfect hope, since there are so many people in a limited space and with basically no natural resources. So how do you see the future of that kind of cities with no natural resources and a limited space? What will happen regarding energies in these big cities?
So I think the main movement today for sure is the renewable energy. So because we are seeing, as we said before, that there is decision making at the local level, and there are two main disruptions. That is what we call prosumers, that are consumer and producers. And what in French sounds very nice is consommateurs, so that the consumers have been actors playing a more active role on the way and the time they make decisions related to energy. So what it says is what we had was a one-way network historically from the production to the demand, and now we have a two-way or even a multi-dimensional way of the energy being produced and consumed in different spaces and different times, what allows us to have an infrastructure that is not anymore hierarchical, but this is complex and this is interconnected. We're going to see more microgrids that can be on and off the grid. We're going to see more connections between grids that maybe are not connected today, that allows us to have choices to get the energy from different sources. And this is probably the most important thing that we have to do in the energy systems today, is to introduce more resilience through a storage system. Because the problem right now that the energy, especially the electricity, is something that is punctual in one moment in time. That's why the systems have few flexibility, so to dump any kind of effects. If we have a storage, it allows us to switch the effects of external events or extreme changes in the network, and to have some time of response. That's why, in order to have this time of response to this dumping, we need to have more storage in the system. And I think this is going to be one of the key factors that are going to make that our system is going to be totally different. Because right now it must be hierarchical, because it must be control centralized. And in order to control this of a decentralized way, we need to have the measures to produce decentralized, to be more connected, to have different sources. And at the same time, if anything happens, we have to be able to survive until we find a new source. That poses many questions about security and about the stability, but we are going more to a network where the stability is going to be in a complex way, in nature way. This is at the limit of chaos, where the stability is always reinventing themselves, and this is going to be less stability given by a network that is designed to be rigid. So it's going to be stable because it's flexible, not because it's rigid.
Excellent. So I have one last question, which may be the most difficult one.
Okay.
You said that our cities have been shaped by automotive, basically. Now we are talking about the importance of energy. How do you see the future of big companies, like big automotive companies, big car manufacturing companies, and how do you see the future of big utilities, especially energy utilities companies for the near future?
I think for the cars, for the companies, the question is that they have to change from being a mere provider or asset to provider of services. So probably they have to go more in, I'm gonna give you a car that allows you to do many things, but I'm gonna give just the car and sell it to you, or I'm gonna provide you services with this car. So I'm gonna be giving you the possibility maybe to change the car from time to time. I'm gonna maybe give you the possibility to upgrade the car, or maybe to rent the car from the company. So I think the companies, if they don't go into the services, they are gonna be taken over by the new companies that are concentrated on the services. Because the asset is not so much the value of the future, it's gonna be how you use the asset. So if the car companies don't go in the direction to move more in the services, they are going to stay in just one corner of the value chain, and they are going to lose all the value of the whole chain.
I see.
So that's why I think this is a question for these companies to say, okay, are we just producing and selling cars, or producing and selling transportation, or are we producing services for mobility?
And is it the same for utilities?
For utilities, it's something very similar. So for utilities, it's even worse, because utilities need to provide stability and security, and there is going to be a moment where, if the evolution is as I think it's going to be, we're going to pass from the hierarchical modus operandi of the network to a decentralized, and this shift is going to have a big impact, because then you have to give part of your security or your stability to many operators, and this is not the way the companies think today, and especially governments, because this is seen as a threat and as a risk. But if you have many different operators in a system, you cannot give the responsibility of the security just to one. In case you want to do this, probably it has to be something centralized that is controlling everything. But as the system is so decentralized and so many actors, it's going to be very complicated. So this phase from a centralized hierarchical system to a decentralized, complex, self-organizing in some way system is going to be a major change that the utilities has to cope with. And now they are seeing, through the evolution of renewables and so on, that there is a lot of problems caused in the energy utilities because of these impacts, and nobody has the answer. Probably it is a market change, and there is a regulation change, and then probably a mentality change needed for the future. But as of today, I think everybody is more reluctant to make any decision, because it could be too early. But when the decision has to be done, let's see what they can come with.
Excellent. So as a conclusion, is there like the one thing I didn't see, I didn't even ask you about the future of energy or the future of cities, which is like the elephant in the room, but I didn't see it, but you see it because you are in this field? Is there like a big thing coming in the future of cities and energy that I should know and I didn't even ask you about?
I don't know. You know a lot, so I don't know what can it be. I think there is something that I'm a little bit concerned, but at the same time this is very exciting. That this is we have all these new companies coming. So we have all these new startups with new ideas and new business models. So the question is always how we can retain the values of the old system by introducing new companies. It's like Airbnb is having an impact on the tourism, or Uber or Grab Taxi in Singapore is having an impact on the transportation, public transportation, or taxi drivers. So the question is how we're going to make sure that all these disruptions are going in the good direction. And there is a problem in the regulation. Singapore is very flexible in the way they are able to adapt the regulation to the changes. But many countries of the world, they don't have this possibility to make these fast changes. So one of the main questions we are going to have is, are we going to have blackouts in some cities?
Wow.
Are we going to have moments where cities are not able to cope with the transformation and the change from the old to the new? And this could have some impacts socially and geopolitically if we have dysfunctional cities. So until now, cities are based on the old technologies, and if we begin to go with the new, let's say a newcomer make one big utility or one big infrastructure provider collapse, what will be the impact? So I think this is one of the main questions to be solved, how to make a revolution without having to fight a war between old and new. So this change is going to happen this century, and probably this is one of the main issues. Are we going to be able to do it?
Thank you, Pablo. Very, very interesting. Thank you very
Thanks for
much.
inviting me.